What will you do now? Do you want to proceed with the interview? You can leave if you prefer.
As soon as I entered the room, the interviewer, who was the HR manager, blurted this out.
The headquarters really insisted, so I reluctantly set aside some time. Honestly, there are plenty of others who could take your place.
I glared at the face of the HR manager and said, "What a coincidence. I felt the same way. That's why I came to the interview. Please don't forget my face, you belittled. What goes around comes around. Then I will leave you."
Impertinent.
I left the room with a furious HR manager and the employee beside him. If someone is this terrible, there's no reason to hesitate. I am Marty Johnson. I'm the 7th generation of a traditional confectionery company. It started as a small pastry shop, but during a sweets boom in my great-grandfather's time, it caught the wave and expanded its distribution channels significantly. Now, it has grown into a large corporation with 8 factories and 5 branch offices nationwide. One of the things that our company has valued is the on-site approach. To make good products, you need good employees. For that, we must create an environment where employees are genuinely motivated to work. That starts with understanding the field. For generations, successors have first worked as employees, rotating through branches and accumulating experience in the field across various departments before they are recognized as successors. In this way, we have valued every employee's voice in the field, addressed their grievances, reduced turnover, and improved the quality of our workforce. Based on feedback from the field, we have streamlined processes and enhanced productivity. I was no exception, and as an employee, I went around the branch office hiding my background. I have grasped the unique characteristics of each branch, like one that thrives on local community engagement and is loved by the locals, boosting sales, or another with a younger workforce keen on product development and innovation, and I have made proposals to leverage these strengths to my father. Through such accomplishments, I became the president. Even now as president, I have never forgotten a principle of being on-site approach. However, in recent years, I've started hearing unsettling things. One branch in particular had an unusually high turnover rate. This branch had given the HR department full control over hiring. Also, productivity there had significantly dropped. Clearly, something was going on. I reached out to the HR department at the branch to see if they knew anything. However, the response from the HR manager was this:
As far as we can see, there are no problems. The records might show a high turnover, but it's not really due to any specific reasons here. It's just that several people have resigned due to personal circumstances.
Pushing further, I got this response:
Only those in the field really understand it. Please don't judge just by the numbers. I'm telling you, there are no issues from where we stand. Can you just trust me?
It was getting nowhere. Indeed, when I investigated the reasons for leaving, they were listed as family circumstances. On paper, nothing seemed amiss. But I was certain something was happening in the HR department. Because in departments where HR was not involved, turnover was not that high. Looking back, I found that this trend began about 5 years ago when the former HR manager brought his brother-in-law, Ryan, who had been working in the HR department of another company, to our company to serve as his one-hand man. And it escalated 2 years ago, the year Ryan became HR manager, following the former manager's retirement. I had been warned about this by my son, Tom, who is at the headquarters. However, I had underestimated it because the former HR manager had been my former boss. When I was a new employee, he taught me everything from scratch. That continued even as I rotated through various departments, and he became a valued confidant regardless of position. Having no siblings, he was like a brother to me because of our close ages. That's why, even when he said he was pulling his brother-in-law from another company, and even after reports of rising turnover rates at the branch, I thought, he's got this. I respected and trusted him. And now, here we are. It can no longer be dismissed as just a temporary thing.
Dad, we can't overlook this anymore. I'll go there myself.
Tom finally said, looking disappointed. Tom was also helped by the former HR manager when he joined the company. Though we had grown apart over the past 5 years, he had treated him like a son. If Ryan is pursued, the problem will go back to the former HR manager who hired him to succeed him. It was a tough decision, but I couldn't let our valuable employees suffer any further. No, it's fine. I'll go. I'm sorry for making you worry. I should have made a decision sooner. First, I'm going to talk to the former HR manager, Keith. I made the decision to intervene at the branch. I contacted the former HR manager. I called him to a coffee shop near his house to have a detailed discussion. It's been a while, Keith. I'm glad to see you.
Sorry.
As soon as I spoke, Keith apologized to me.
I've done something terrible. I betrayed your trust.
He said with bitterness. You know why I'm here. I want to hear it from you. The story Keith told was shocking. Keith married and became a son-in-law of the Ingram family. His in-laws and his wife Kathy doted on Keith's brother-in-law, Ryan. Spoiled from a young age, Ryan grew up to be very proud and selfish. He worked in the HR department of a company due to family connections, but caused problems and couldn't stay there. Then he set his sights on Keith, his brother-in-law.
Get him a job at your company. You're the HR manager. You can do it.
Keith said his in-laws and Kathy begged him daily until he finally gave in. Ryan did have impressive educational credentials, and he had gained some experience at a well-known local company due to family connections. That made Keith think it might be all right to accept him. Thus, Ryan joined, hiding his previous issues and claiming he was pulled as a right-hand man from a famous company to be HR manager. Why on earth did you place such a problematic person in HR of all places? I couldn't help but look grim. Keith said he had warned Ryan several times before he joined. Everything from the company's philosophy and the role of HR to valuing each employee as a human being.
I thought I could supervise him closely and teach him. There were employees I had trained for succession, so I thought everything would be fine after my retirement.
That was his reason for placing Ryan in HR. However, after joining, Ryan began to use Keith's influence to assert himself and eventually stop listening to Keith's directions.
That's why I thought he would calm down a bit if I retired and a new HR manager took over.
He explained. Keith's words shocked me further. What are you saying? You recommended Ryan as your successor, didn't you? When I raised my voice in surprise, he looked stunned and flustered.
I did let Ryan join, but I never intended for him to become HR manager. Saying he was my right hand was just an excuse to keep an eye on him. I only put him in HR to watch over him. There was no way I wrote any recommendation.
If there hadn't been a recommendation letter, another employee who was the deputy HR manager at the time would have been promoted to manager. However, Ryan was appointed as HR manager on an exceptional basis because Keith, whom everyone trusted, had gone out of his way to recruit him and had allegedly recommended him. Since Ryan became HR manager, the number of resignations has been rapidly increasing. The quality of the branch employees has significantly deteriorated. There are many complaints from the field. All these issues were only in the departments associated with HR and Ryan. It's clear that Ryan is the cause. The headquarters trusted him simply because Keith recommended him. But no one expected all that to be a deception. I was at a loss for words. Keith has been living separately from his wife Kathy since he left the company. He couldn't keep up with the way his in-laws operated and decided to distance himself. Therefore, Keith wasn't informed about Ryan, including that Ryan had become HR manager. Since Ryan joined the company as his brother-in-law, Keith has been avoiding his colleagues at the company out of guilt.
If only I had noticed sooner,
he said, hitting the table in frustration. At the time, the recommendation letter was kept in his desk drawer. He locked it when he was away for a long time, but left it unlocked when he just stepped out to get coffee. Ryan, who sat next to him, could have used that opportunity to rewrite the recommendation letter. So, the recommendation letter was forged by Ryan. I was shocked to learn this truth I had never imagined, but at the same time, I was relieved. It wasn't Keith who had recommended that hopeless Ryan. He might have indeed brought him into the company through connections, but that wasn't. Keith had been trying to fix Ryan even at the cost of his own retirement. I said, "It's certainly your responsibility that you got Ryan hired by falsifying his background, but all his actions thereafter are on Ryan. We'll handle Ryan appropriately on our end. By the way, since you left, I've lost someone to consult with. If you're willing to take responsibility, could you come back to work in a president's office?" Keith nodded silently. His shoulders trembled slightly as he clenched his fists on his knees. I petted Keith's shoulder twice. Thus, I was able to bring back one valuable employee. Knowing the truth, I started taking action. I asked Tom to contact the employees who had resigned. From what I heard, the reason for their resignations was indeed Ryan. It turns out Ryan was unilaterally lowering the evaluations of employees he disliked. If they protested, he'd further lower their evaluation, accusing them of disrespectful attitudes towards a supervisor and not following instructions.
Our company is the on-site approach. The HR in the field is under my jurisdiction as HR manager, and I won't allow interference in my decisions.
Even when other HR employees tried to intervene and reason with Ryan, he wouldn't listen. Worse, he started targeting the employees who had tried to reason with him. Being forced to work overtime day after day, the constant petty harassment was enough. They decided to resign. It was rejected when they wrote, "I can't keep up with the HR manager," as the reason for their resignation. They were told to only cite family circumstances as acceptable. I couldn't stand Ryan. On-site approach doesn't mean that supervisors can do whatever they want with their employees. It's about valuing each employee's voice in the field. Ryan hurt our valuable employees with his selfish reasoning and caused us to lose them. Not only did he forge documents, but he also mocked our core values. I desperately wanted to settle things with Ryan myself. So I carefully planned to ensure that Ryan couldn't make any excuses, and I could witness firsthand what he was up to. I decided to interview with Ryan under the guise of Marty Ingram, 58, interested in mid-career entry, as referred by the headquarters. The experience was far from an interview.
Is an interview even necessary?
As soon as I entered the room, he scoffed at me. His demeanor was not befitting of someone conducting an interview at the request of the headquarters.
It is better to say these things clearly to him.
An employee seated next to the interviewer hastily tried to intervene, but the interviewer was unyielding.
I'm sorry for the rude comments.
The employee sighed in resignation and apologized to me. Then, looking at my face, he seemed to realize something, his eyes widening. He tried to speak to the interviewer, but I stopped him with a look. Unaware, the interviewer continued to indulge in his monologue.
I appreciate you coming, but at your age, this interview itself is pointless. Why did you leave your last job at that age? Wouldn't it have been better to stay there? It's too late to come to us now. You'll probably leave soon anyway. I see no point in conducting this interview. The headquarters insisted, so I'm interviewing you. But honestly, you're not even worth calling in. There are plenty of others who could take your place.
Honestly, it was anything but an interview. It was merely a venting session for the HR manager. He was probably expecting me to panic or tremble with humiliation. His tone was mocking, and a nasty smile played on his lips. But this was neither surprising nor unexpected for me. I firmly faced the HR manager, who was the interviewer, and said, "What a coincidence. I felt the same way. That's precisely why I came to this interview." Here, I gave him a slight smile. Unfortunately, this can hardly be called an interview. It's a waste of time to be interviewed by you. I'm also busy. I don't have time to participate in your venting session. It's very disappointing that someone like you is the HR manager. Please look at my face you've mocked and remember it well. Never forget it. What goes around comes around. Then I will leave you. The HR manager stood up from his chair, his face red with anger, and shouted loudly,
Insolent. I took time out for an interview you shouldn't even have gotten. Be grateful. At your age, no one else would hire you. Understand your place and act accordingly.
As he frothed at the mouth in rage, I left the room, ignoring the HR manager and the employee beside him. The employee next to Ryan, who tried to intervene and looked apologetic to me. He saw my face and knew I was the president. He was likely the trained employee, the rightful successor Keith had mentioned. If things had gone as they should have, he would have been the HR manager. If only Ryan hadn't forged the documents. To begin with, it's unthinkable for an HR manager not to recognize the president's face, even if the name was falsified. I overlooked it for 2 years, but it's time for appropriate retribution. The judgment was set for an orientation day for employees in April. You can see it in the company's intranet. That day, when all employees would learn about our company's philosophy, would mark Ryan's last. On the day of the orientation, a venue near the headquarters gathered the new employees, executives from the headquarters, and all branch executives. I had Keith come and wait in a separate room. The orientation proceeded without any hitches. Even as I spoke from the stage, Ryan seemed unaware. He was listlessly suppressing a yawn. But that expression would last only a few more minutes. I smirked inwardly. Glancing at Keith waiting off stage during the interlude, he gave a wry smile. Now, everyone, I would like to share our company's philosophy with you. It is the very foundation of our company, something very important. Please listen carefully. Our company upholds on-site approach. Good products require good employees. For that to happen, we need an environment where employees sincerely feel motivated to work. There are things you can't understand from the headquarters. There are decisions that can't be made based solely on numbers. For that reason, we pick up the voice of the field and delegate authority to it. At this point, I called Ryan. HR Manager Ryan, can you come up here? Startled by the sudden call, Ryan jerked up and turned red. He looked around nervously, then looked up at me as if to say, "Me?" "Yes, you, Ryan. Do you remember my face?" Ryan looked at me with a bewildered expression. When he recognized me, his mouth dropped open. The color drained from his face and he began to tremble. "It seems you remember. Let's fulfill the promise from the other day. Come up to the stage, please." Ryan hesitated, but the surrounding executives forced him up to the stage. This man here misunderstood our company's philosophy. He misconstrued the meaning of on-site approach and the delegation of authority as permission for supervisors to do whatever they pleased. He misused his power solely to show off his authority, mistreating our valuable employees. As a result, many employees resigned. I hope none of you ever become like him. If there are any such individuals, please speak up and let us know. I promise you, I will do everything in my power to ensure none of you are harmed by such individuals. The authority given should not be used to satisfy personal desires. Our company will never tolerate such tyranny. The venue fell silent. Ryan tried to escape in anger but was firmly held by the executives and couldn't get away. He stood there, trembling and blushing with humiliation under the scornful gazes of everyone. I consider each of you employees a treasure. The philosophy of on-site approach exists for your sake. In fact, Ryan joined our company mid-career, using connections. He had a wonderful resume, but unfortunately, it was all a lie. It seems he failed to understand our company's philosophy and betrayed the trust of the person who hired and trained him. He forged documents and took up the role of HR manager, which he should not have had, and did as he pleased for 2 years. I regret that it took so long to notice, and many employees have left our company because of it. It was a grave oversight on my part. I am truly sorry. I looked around the hall and apologized to them. I turned my attention to the executives with the thought, I am sorry for my selfishness. I am truly blessed with good employees. I felt a warmth in my chest. The new employees were surprised by this sudden public denunciation and puzzled why someone unrelated like themselves was being apologized to. You might be wondering why I am discussing this now and exposing our company's embarrassment today. I want you to know that I am the president who failed to see through such tyranny. It's precisely because I am that president that I need your help. Please do not hesitate to let us hear the voice of the field. We are human. We make mistakes and there are things we don't notice. When that happens, I want you to speak up. We will listen to those voices with all our might. That is our company's philosophy. A big applause erupted from the venue. Branch offices and executives from the headquarters were also nodding and clapping vigorously. Recently, I decided to interview him incognito. I wanted to see him for myself, so I had him interview me under the guise of a request from headquarters. Guess what happened? He immediately asked, "Is an interview necessary?" I was taken aback. He said there's no point in hiring someone my age, that there's no meaning to the interview, and that there are plenty of others who could replace me. HR is where employees are evaluated and placed, which means you need to know the company's employees well to manage it. Yet, he didn't even recognize my face, despite us meeting every year. Well, according to him, there are plenty of others who could replace me. When the time comes, I intend to pass on this role, but there are as many replacements for him as there are for me. I believe that the HR manager should be someone who knows and values the employees. I hereby declare a change in executives. HR Manager Ryan Martinez, you are fired effective today for falsifying company documents. If you object, we can discuss it with the appropriate authorities. It would be better for you to resign quietly. It may be difficult for someone your age to find another job, but do your best. And just so you know, we will tell the truth when inquired about your reemployment. Remember that the new HR manager will be the current deputy manager, Paul Smith. Thus, the public denunciation came to a close. By exposing a part of our company, I hope everyone understood that we have nothing to hide and that we are a company that will do anything to value our employees. Ryan was let out by Keith, shouting loudly as he went. He was delivered straight to his in-laws' home, where Keith spilled everything that had happened. Keith's reputation at his in-laws plummeted. Having been fired twice, Ryan lost the trust of his wife's family and was divorced. He tried to return to his parents' home but was rejected. The backlash from his parents and Keith's wife, Kathy, who had doted on him all his life, was severe. Keith, whom Ryan had relied on, turned him away, saying Keith could be bothered any longer. Thus far, I have written as accurately as possible, pulling out the recording of the orientation day and including self-reflection. Some names have been fictionalized to prevent identification, but please forgive me for that. Since then, communication within the company has greatly improved. I contacted each employee who had resigned, telling them that if they were still willing to work for our company, I would like them to come back. Some had found new jobs, but most returned. To reward them, I created an employee consultation desk in the president's office. To ensure that employee voices are never suppressed, requests and consultations from employees can be directly delivered to me. Keith was appointed to run this service. Though he initially refused, claiming responsibility for the past events, but I insisted he take on the role to responsibly listen to the employees. He is now divorced and living by himself. I plan to make full use of him until he is 65. Daily intense discussions are held in the president's office based on employee feedback. Such like, it's neither this nor that. Sometimes, we even invite the employees who consulted us to join the discussions directly. A newly hired employee recently said, "I have an idea I'd like to try," and proposed a new dessert. And now for a postscript about Ryan. He is now working part-time at a convenience store. One of the branch office employees happened to stop by the convenience store and saw him at the register.
Please do your job properly. Can't you even greet properly? Isn't that basic? What kind of work have you been doing up until now?
Ryan was being scolded by a college student working part-time about the age of his own children. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw Ryan being lectured by someone so young.
Long time no see. Do you remember me? Your harassment forced me to resign, but thanks to the president, I'm back at the company now. To think I'd run into you here, of all places. I never imagined it.
Apparently, he said it at the checkout.
This is a respectable job too. Don't belittle it. Who do you think you are?
Ryan started making a scene in retaliation and was dragged away by the college student.
Enough already. What are you doing at your age? Aren't you embarrassed?
Then from the back, another voice chimed in. This is a story I learned from the consultation window. There may be replacements for me or Ryan, but there are no substitutes for our valuable employees. Each one is an irreplaceable treasure. I'm committed to never forgetting that.